So you heard the reaction from Wilmington this morning. Let's hear what people around the country think today. They're already having their say and listening into talk radio. We're expecting a very lively discussion with two radio hosts who join us this morning. Steve Malzberg is in New York. He's sitting in on Bill Bennett's Morning in America show. Rachel Maddow of Air America is in our studio. Hi, both of you. Good morning. They've already gotten going. Steve's in the middle of his day. Good morning. Let's start, in fact, with you, Steve. What do you think stood out the most in this speech? I mean, what would you highlight for everybody?
It was definitely the president's explaining the war on terror again and pointing out what we need to do in Iraq, saying that we didn't plan on this, we don't want to be here, we wish it were over and victory had been achieved, but please, he made a plea, stick with it, let's see it through, and let's try what we proposed, the so-called surge, and let's get it done. I think he presented the war plan and why it's important in a very, very well-presented manner.
Would you agree, Rachel? Did you think the plea stood out?
Well, I think what stood out for the speech was that there was so much nothing in it. There really was nothing new. There's no headline from it. In terms of my show, we talked about what to anticipate from the president. There's usually a surprise, some new surprise announcement. There was nothing really new on Iraq, nothing really new, certainly on New Orleans, nothing really new on any of our other major domestic challenges, anything that you could really explain in a soundbite. The biggest surprise was the baby Einstein thing, which was not that
not
that notable. There wasn't much substantive.
Obviously, Steve totally disagrees.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously addressed everything domestic. First of all, you want a surprise on Iraq? There wasn't going to be a surprise on Iraq. We knew what he was going to tell us about Iraq. But domestically speaking, he touted the strong economy, even though Jim Webb said we're living in the time of robber barons. He touted the health care problems and addressed them and made a proposal, which is more than the Democrats have done on any domestic problem.
Steve, what was his health care proposal? Wait, what was it? Just like one sentence?
I assumed you were listening. He's advocating tax breaks to help people afford to pay their health care insurance better, to prompt people to be able to buy it more readily. I assumed you were listening.
Yeah,
he also talked
you can
about
tell that's going to light the nation on fire today.
Well, you said he said nothing, and if a liberal Democrat had said, hey, how about some tax cuts to help people afford health care, you'd all be applauding. But it was Bush, and no matter what he said, it's DOA with you people.
But you know, Lindsey Graham said that any issue that's not Iraq really, for the most part, is going by the wayside. Do you think that's true with your listeners this morning, Steve? Are they really talking to you about Iraq, or are they bringing in all these other domestic issues that you're mentioning?
Well, so far in the short term of the show, we've had people comment on someone was disappointed that the president did introduce a flat tax and talk about the income tax problem in the country. We had people admire him for standing firm on Iraq. I think immigration, as the show goes on, is going to be a huge topic because the conservatives in the audience are going to be very unhappy with the guest worker program that the president said is not amnesty, but in my view and in the view of many others, is nothing more than amnesty.
You saw some of that unhappiness, actually, when they did the cutaway shots to some Republicans who were listening in on the president's speech in person, who were clearly very unhappy about that. Let's talk a little bit about the working together, the bipartisanship. We had heard the president talk about that. Really another plea. Let's work together on this. Do you think, or do your listeners think, this can possibly happen over the next 2 years that this president's in office?
Well, it was interesting, specifically on Iraq, that what I felt was like a little bit of false humility. When he announced the recent escalation, the recent rise in troop numbers for Iraq, the president announced it 2 weeks ago. The troops are already there by the time he gave the State of the Union. He did not propose this to the nation or to the Congress to discuss. He just went ahead and did it. And then he goes out in the State of the Union and says, I'm asking for your support on this for something that's already a done deal. And so he got stylistically points for appearing to be humble on this while he's already gone ahead with it. No, but the 1st Combat Brigade from the 82nd Airborne is already on the ground in Baghdad.
Well,
so for him to be asking permission now from the Congress to consider this is a little bit dollar late and a day short.
He's not asking, well, Rachel, he's not asking permission from anybody. He's going to do it no matter what the Congress says and what the polls say, unless the Congress cuts off funding.
But Steve, when you just said that he was asking, Steve, when you just said,
please let me do it, he said support me.
Steve, when you just described what he said in the State of the Union, you said he asked for support on Iraq. He asked for the nation's support on this. He's asking.
Rachel, not permission. Right.
How about when he asked for everybody to work together? Do your listeners think that, in fact, we're going to see, I mean, he mentioned crossing the aisle, working together. Some people have said, well, nice time to ask when you're looking at a democratically controlled Congress. Right. What are your listeners saying about that? Let's start with Steve first.
Sure.
Well, I mean, he did it to the chagrin of many of my listeners with No Child Left Behind. He let Ted Kennedy write the whole No Child Left Behind Act. So this is a president that's worked across the aisle and has reached out time and time again. I don't think it's a surprise, but I predict that the Democratic-controlled Congress will take nothing that the president proposes. They'd rather have nothing get done over the next 2 years than agree and give the president credit for anything.
So hearing both sides have said by now we should all work together, you're saying that none of your listeners are buying it. How about your listeners?
No, I mean, what's hard to take...
No, they're not saying that. No, they're not going to work together.
No, nobody's accepting that this is a legitimate proposal from the president. After the way the Republicans ran Congress when they were in control for the first part of the Bush administration, the idea that the Republicans suddenly have now discovered bipartisanship and the wisdom of working across the aisle, you know, they didn't live that way, and it's not likely that the Democrats will either.
Okay, so you're saying the Democrats are saying, since we didn't see it, we certainly aren't going to deliver it, even though we've said we'll try to deliver it.
Well, yeah, it just seems hypocritical coming from them who they ran on, you know, they wanted to pass everything with a majority of the majority. They only wanted Republican votes on passing legislation. They never wanted Democrats. So for them to ask for bipartisanship now, it just comes across as a little sad.
Go ahead, Steve.
You know, the Democrats chose Jim Webb. Jim Webb, in the past, has said that when he saw Bill Clinton saluting a Marine, it revolted him, it disgusted him. He's called affirmative action state-sponsored racism. He said the Clintons are elitists who were taught that the laws don't apply to them. I think it's an interesting choice of Jim Webb to give the Democratic response with those issues in his past.
So we're going to leave it there because we're out of time. You know, you have 3 hosts essentially on TV. You're going to eat up a lot of time. Steve Malzberg, Rachel Maddow. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it for joining us.
Thank you.